So we should speak a little slower.
No, not as
Okay, so that's fine.
TV.
So everyone
Kunz
up
Lara
front
TV.
will understand English.
Sankalp Babu.
We'll try to speak without our American accent.
Shloka.
Just down a little, just down a little. No.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Even a little further down.
While he's warming up, it's a great pleasure being here. It's been a number of years since at least I've been to the temple. But you can judge a temple by the cleanliness, and everything is so clean and scrubbed and beautiful and well kept. So I know that a temple of very high consciousness. So it's an honor for us to be here. I'm coming from Govardhan, where I came from a retreat, because retreats are necessary. Prabhupada wanted us to take a break and recharge our spiritual batteries. Just like all of you every day are recharging your cell phone, and sometimes it goes down to 1% and you get nervous. So in a similar way, we have to recharge our spiritual batteries, otherwise they will go down to 1% and we will get very nervous because we're about to lose something. And Akhandadhi is coming from Europe. From here, we're both flying out today to Chandigarh, then up to IIT Mundi. We both are with the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and we're also charged with designing the content for the museum at the TOVP, a recent assignment to the BI. So we've been collaborating with our scientists, philosophers, Sanskritists, and all, and we've been meeting very regularly. And so and we're going up to IIT, the wonderful Leela Purushottama, who you must all know, is director. And we're doing a double conference. One conference is sponsored by IIT on the nature of consciousness. That's basically in Prabhupada's terminology, life comes from life. And the second conference sponsored by the BI, again, working with our team that is exploring consciousness and sharing the results of our research. Your very own Prem Kishore, who intimately works with us and is so intelligent, will be there with us, as well as I believe some others from the community. So I just want to say how special it is to be at this community. And one last comment. Last night we were able to spend some good time with Gopal Krishna Maharaj. We're old friends. When he was a grahasta, I used to stay over at his apartment. I was just a bhakta of some sorts. And he was always very kind to me and helped me overcome, just like I was at Govardhan Hill. And Govardhan Hill is famous for overcoming spiritual obstacles. You pray to, it's the largest deity, you have the largest Gita in the world. Well, Govardhan Hill is the largest deity in the world. And you can pray for overcome obstacles. So in my early days, Gopal Krishna Maharaj was my Govardhan Hill. He helped me overcome obstacles. So we've seen each other over the years. Of course, sad to see him in his physical difficulties, but his mental acuity is as sharp and as kindly as ever. And it was just a great privilege that we could sit with him for a while, talking about ancient times and talking about our next adventures that we're working on. So I just wanted to say, in a way of introduction, I'm Brahma Tirtha, coming from Gainesville, Florida, where I run the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and I'll embarrass my dear friend Akhandadhi. He's on our board of directors and the content advisor for the whole museum, content manager, I mean to say. Also, his Atma paradigm is on the BI website, which is Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies, Prabhupada's original name, bihstudies.org, bihstudies.org. And his Atma paradigm goes into great detail, the very topic we're discussing today, something that those who are really interested in understanding the nature of consciousness would want to see. And for a dozen years, Akhandadhi was president of the manor during their roughest time, when the neighbors tried throwing them out, basically. And by the way, they lost. Okay, with that, Akhandadhi, it's you. I'm like greeting my audience a little bit.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Well, I should just say just a couple of words then. It's great to be here with Brahma Tirtha Prabhu. There's a wonderful collaboration happening all over the world with many devotee scientists and philosophers coming together under the auspices now of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. For perhaps some decades it was a little quiet, too quiet, because this is one arm of Srila Prabhupada's preaching mission. Prabhupada inaugurated the ISKCON International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He also established the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. These are two separate entities. They work collaboratively. And then he established a third entity. So these are only the three entities that Prabhupada established: ISKCON, BBT, and the Bhaktivedanta Institute. It is meant to work in collaboration, of course, with ISKCON. It is ISKCON in its greater sense, but it has special responsibility and freedom in order to go out and bring the message that consciousness is not something material. Consciousness is not produced from the body and the brain. Consciousness is eternal. Consciousness is the function of the Atma. And the Atma is the part and parcel of the supreme conscious being, Sri Krishna. So there's so much to be involved with that. And it's a message that I think can help particularly resonate with the intelligent group of people, as Prabhupada hoped, but also particularly amongst the young. So I'm hoping that wherever you hear about the work of ISS or BI, you will come forward if you have any qualification or even just interest in these matters to participate and to spread the message of the philosophy of the Srimad Bhagavatam through the preaching of Krishna consciousness and the scientific understanding of our philosophy.
हरे कृष्णा, जिन भक्तों को हिंदी में प्रवचन समझने में ज़्यादा सुविधा है, आपके लिए पीछे अनुवाद की व्यवस्था की गई है. इस ग्रे जय नारायण प्रभु पीछे अनुवाद कर रहे हैं. I'm just announcing that for those devotees who need translation service, there's somebody translating behind. जय नारायण प्रभु पीछे अनुवाद कर रहे हैं. आप कृपया उस सुविधा का लाभ उठाएं. हरे कृष्णा.
And then I just wanted to say, in my former incarnation as temple president at Bhaktivedanta Manor, we did face incredible troubles with the British government trying to close the temple completely. And one great support and help was here in ISKCON Delhi, and His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj gave so much support to our campaign in Britain. So it is 20 years, though, since I have been here at ISKCON Delhi, and just so pleased to see how it is thriving in all these years. Hare Krishna. And now we'll chant Jaya Radha Madhava, and we'll be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhu Jai, ISKCON Sancharya, Srila Prabhu Gora Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yeah.
Oh, what time does class end? Oh, okay. Oh, I got a microphone here. This works. Hare Krishna. We have two books.
Oh. Do we do the Sanskrit?
I would ask. I don't know what they're. So do we chant the verse? Or how do you
Yeah,
normally do it?
we'll just do no.
And you just can you go one verse after another every day?
Yeah, just three.
So if I jump ahead and talk about a later verse, nobody will be mad at me. Okay.
Just want to suggest that you might get a feedback if you use the other mic, so probably you can use the same mic.
Yeah, well, let's try and see. Let's see. Do we getting a feedback? No. Okay, if we do, I'll switch. But thank you.
Well, I'll lead it. Yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're studying from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, and this is chapter 15, entitled Sages Narada and Angira Instruct King Chitraketu. We're studying text 3. Yata Prayanti Samyanti Yata Prayanti Samyanti Shroto Vegena Baluka Shroto Vegena Baluka Samyujyante Viyujyante Samyujyante Viyujyante Tata Kalena Dehina Tata Kalena Dehina Yata Prayanti Sangyanti Shroto Vegena Balukaha Samyujyanti Vidyudyanti Tata Kalena Dehina Yata Prayanti Sangyanti Shroto Vegena Balukaha Samyujyante Viyujyante Tata Kalena Dehina Yata prayanti sanyanti. Vegena baluka. Sayujjante viyujjante. Will I read and then just pass it over to you to speak? I'll read and then pass it over to you to speak. Okay. Viyujjante. Yata, just as prayanti, move apart, sangyanti, come together, shrota vegena, by the force of waves, baluka, the small particles of sand, samyujjante, they are united, viyujjante, they are separated. Tirtha, similarly. Kalena, by time. Dehana, the living entities who have accepted material bodies. Translation. O King, I'll read it first. O King, as small particles of sand sometimes come together and are sometimes separated due to the force of the waves, the living entities who have accepted material bodies sometimes come together and are sometimes separated by the force of time. Please repeat. O King, as small particles of sand sometimes come together and are sometimes separated due to the force of the waves. The living entities who have accepted material bodies sometimes come together and are sometimes separated by the force of time. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The misunderstanding of the conditioned soul is the bodily conception of life. The body is material, but within the body is the soul. This is spiritual understanding. Unfortunately, one who is in ignorance, under the spell of material illusion, accepts the body to be the self. He cannot understand that the body is matter. Like small particles of sand, bodies come together and are separated by the force of time. And people falsely lament for unification and separation. Unless one knows this, there is no question of happiness. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 13, this is the first instruction given by the Lord. And perhaps you can all repeat or say this together with me. Dehanosmin yata dehe kumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. We are not the body. We are spiritual beings trapped in the body. Our real interest lies in understanding this simple fact. Then we can make further spiritual progress. Otherwise, if we remain in the bodily conception of life, our miserable material existence will continue forever. Political adjustments, social welfare work, medical assistance, and the other programs we have manufactured for peace and happiness will never endure. We shall have to undergo the sufferings of material life, one after another. Therefore, material life is said to be dukkhaliam ashashvatam. It is a reservoir of miserable conditions. Yatha prayanti sangyanti shrotavegena bhaluka sayujanti viyujanti tata kalena dehana. O King, as small particles of sand sometimes come together and are sometimes separated due to the force of the waves, the living entities who have accepted material bodies sometimes come together and are sometimes separated by the force of time.
Now, let me see. I think all of you here have heard many times, you're not this body. We're going to give you a test at the end of the class to see if you believe that. That will wait. So we'll give you a little test at the end. It's a fun test. We'll see. But another example that's given in the Bhagavatam is another example given in the Bhagavatam is, and I've seen this, sitting at the seashore, a wave comes in and some particles of seaweed entangle with each other, and then another wave comes and the particles separate. Therefore, and that's given a metaphor like a family. We come together and then we come apart. Now, what does this mean in your practical life? Now, King Chitraketu wanted a son, but karmically he wasn't supposed to have one. We find sometimes parents will try to have a child and there's no success. And somebody else doesn't want a child and they have a dozen. That happens. So there's a soul is intended to come to a particular body at a time. So King Chitraketu, it wasn't supposed to have a child, but a sage came, I think it was Agira Muni, whoever, he insisted on a child. And the child would be the source of great happiness and great distress. And the child was born and died. In the previous chapter, you know, and he was lamenting so loud, even Narada Muni took some sympathy. And then the child came back briefly and said these amazing words. You're lamenting, oh, you're my father? Which father? Which life? So many lives we've had. Now, there's a reason why you don't remember your previous lives. Can somebody tell me the reason we do not remember our previous lives? Raise your hand. Yes?
If we actually know our previous lives, it will be always an anxiety and stress.
Yeah, imagine, thinking of all the, some of us, our parents have died, it's so sad, we lament. Imagine if we had 1 million mothers we were remembering, 1 million fathers, 1 million brothers. Say again?
It is the mercy of the Lord.
Mercy of the Lord. So we don't remember because it would be too painful, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It would be too painful. And sometimes somebody does remember. In fact, there's this famous scientist who passed on, psychologist, Ian Stevenson, or psychiatrist maybe? Scientist, whatever. He was from the University of Virginia, and he did several thousand studies of reincarnation stories. We find that sometimes somebody remembers their previous life. And when they usually before 5 years old. They'll remember, they'll have a birthmark maybe where the injury that caused their death. Usually it's somebody who died some quick death, some violent death maybe. So somebody will remember, and they'll even refer to a village they've never seen or never heard of. And they go to that village and they recognize the house, they recognize their former parents. And these cases have been studied. There's 2,700 well-documented cases by this famous Ian Stevenson, University of Virginia. Now, he passed on, though I don't know where he was reborn, but that's a different matter. So Ian Stevenson did these studies. Now, these studies occur more often in places like India and Burma and areas like that, though some very notable cases occurred in America or UK. Now, why is it that these studies, these cases are more common where somebody remembered their previous life in India? Can somebody guess why they're more common? Ooh, trick question. Why did most of the studies you find be in India and not elsewhere? Anybody have an idea? Yes?
Because of the exposure to the philosophy and some evolutionary concepts that are already used in understanding that there is a soul.
Partially. That partially. The scientists said the real reason was because people in India believed in it and therefore they reported it. In America, I had my own experience. My own son was remembering previous life as a Swami. And he would always dress up as a Swami and talk about it. But because in our culture, we didn't think about these things, I didn't make much of it. Wish I had made much of it. Now there's no recollection of it. But in India, because people understand the philosophy of it, because people understand it, more cases are reported. But it goes all over the world, every country, every society. It's not unique to India. So people, that can rarely happen, but sometimes happen. Chaitanya Charan puts it brilliantly. Like, I just flew to India, so I did everything I could to avoid jet lag, because jet lag is miserable. So there's something called reincarnation lag, where you had a previous life, and now this life I have some characteristics. Sometimes it happens with gender, where I don't know which gender I am, because previous life I was one, and now I'm this, and I get a little mixed up in these things. It can happen in many different areas. A little bit of reincarnation lag can happen. So we see all these evidences there. So at the Bhaktivedanta Institute now, we have a team working with a Professor Jim Tucker, who's a successor to Ian Stevenson. I mention Ian Stevenson's name because some of you may have heard of him. He's quite famous in this area. And we have our own team now going to India and doing reincarnation cases. And why are we doing this? Well, we believe the work, but sometimes as scientists we have to get hands-on to understand it in more detail. So we have a team, and we're going up tonight up to IIT Monday with our dear Leela Purushottama, and at that place we're going to have a presentation on what they're finding in these reincarnation studies. So on here, there's another side to this story though that's important. So we're talking about reincarnation, and we're talking about detachment. There's a verse 8, which I'll jump ahead on a little bit, is very interesting. Divisions of generalization and specification such as nationality and individuality are the imaginations of persons who are not advanced in knowledge. So I can ask, how many of you, don't raise your hands, are BJP? How many of you are RSS? How many of you are Congress? In my country, how many are Democrats, Republicans? In your country, how many are liberal, labor, and a few other parties?
Conservative, yeah.
Conservative, and and so these are the. Now, It's natural. For example, I'll talk about the American scene. Some people by nature are a little more conservative, and they'll align with those people. Some are a little more liberal. They'll align with them. That's okay. It's by nature. We have different natures, and we all need to get along. If everybody was anytime I've run any committee, I've been very careful of one thing. The people that get appointed to the committee, I make sure they don't all think like me. Because if they do, we're going to have a poor product. When we work together and have a variety, we always get a better product. So similarly, we can have different points of view. Some of you are going to be very inclined. BJP is the way, the light, the truth. Some of you can say, oh, Congress, what happened to my poor India? Some will say like that, and whatever other parties. Before coming in today, I took a glance at the Times of India so I could speak relevantly. And it's the same Times of India when I lived here in '71 in Delhi. I used to read it, and it's the same arguments over the same topics and the same issues. It hasn't changed. And let me give you something that may be disappointing to you. It's not going to change. That's the nature of it. It's going to stay in this conflict. And it says, because these divisions are the imaginations who are not advanced in knowledge. So we're not saying we don't acknowledge there are different natures and all. But if that's the sunum bonum, if that's the essence, then that makes it a failure. Now we're going to relate this back to family because that came up. Now, let me see. We're going to take a little poll. How many of you here are family people? Raise your hand. Okay. And how many of you people are not family people? Raise your hand. And how many of you don't know if you're family people or not? You raise your hand. Because I'm trying to get everyone involved here. We're missing a bunch of people don't know. Okay. Well, we'll have to deal with that later. Okay. Is this verse telling us to walk up to our spouse, be it our husband or wife, and say, you know, you're Maya, and my attachment to you is Maya, and you're Maya. Hey, I've seen enough people in ISKCON do that. So we may chuckle about this, but it happens. Is that the intention? No. Prabhupada once sent a letter to Gaur Hari, the late wonderful devotee, and his wife Prafula Mukhi put it on his refrigerator door. This is around 1973. And she put the letter on the door, so every time he went to the refrigerator, he would see the letter. And in the letter, Prabhupada said, Dear Prafula Mukhi, accept my blessings. I want you to know you are the better half. She wanted her husband to always see that. So there's two problems. One, if we're overly attached, then we end up losing our spiritual life. But if we're overly renounced, it also hurts us, because there's a reason why somebody's a brahmachari, there's a reason why someone's a grahasta. It's what we need for our spiritual advancement. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur put it very well. He said, a grahasta should be outwardly very attached and inwardly somewhat detached. What I see is the opposite. The grahasta is outwardly very detached. You nonsense. Inwardly so attached. That reverses a danger. And we reverse things all the time. Prabhupada said, preach and money will come. We say, okay, once I get some money, I'll start preaching. We reverse everything all the time. So the point of this verse is not to reverse those relationships. If somebody's duty is to be grahasta, then one must at least outwardly be very, very attached. Inwardly, there can be something different. But if we get, in this particular case, it wasn't his lot to have a child. He wanted one, got overly attached and disappointed. And this is called hankering and lamenting. That's what happened. So I'm trying to give some context to the story. Now I'm going to turn it over to Akhandadhi to make some further remarks, and then we'll leave time for question and answers. And I must respond. One thing I have to say, I can't not say it. I'm very honored that we have Gopal Krishna Maharaj here. I don't mean to embarrass him, but knowing him for 50 years and seeing every single day consistently, so consistent in his service, you all have an amazing good fortune to be in his temple. And you should not let a day go by in which you don't express one of the most important of Vaishnav sentiments. When I was at my Govardhan retreat with Satyananda and Burijan, the point was so emphasized. And one of the most important of Vaishnav sentiments, and I'm not talking about wanting prasadam, one of the most important is to be grateful. Because when we're grateful, the envy that all of us have in our heart, otherwise we wouldn't be in this world, will begin to dissipate. And I am personally very grateful that I could be here with Gopal Krishna Maharaj.
Aye. Thank you very much, Brahma Tirtha Prabhu. So, taking the blessings of my senior devotees, and we're very, and as I expressed earlier, I'm personally indebted to His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj for all his service that he did to help Bhaktivedanta Manor and me personally during that particular episode. So, thank you very much. In this verse, Srila Prabhupada's purport is covering what seems to be very basic Krishna conscious philosophy, as Brahmatirtha started. You know, we have heard before, we're not this body. Probably the first thing that a devotee ever said to you is, you're not this body. And it's a crucial element. It's actually the basis of our whole life in Krishna consciousness. Here we have this very famous verse, Deyanusmin yatha dehe kumaram yovanam jara. And it has come just after the the point has been made that the spirit soul, the Atma, is eternal. Now sometimes in our preaching, people challenge us, why are you making up this idea of a soul? What is soul? What's that? Where'd that come? You know? That's imaginary. It's not real. So Prabhupada's genius was to name his movement Krishna consciousness. Consciousness. Does that exist? Does everyone know that it exists? Can anyone deny that it exists? No. The fact that I believe I exist is because I am sensing the world. I'm experiencing stuff. I think, I love, I want. Those are all expressions of consciousness. So Jiva Goswami in his Tattva Sandarbha, having established the pramanas and the authority, particularly of the Srimad Bhagavatam, then goes about establishing consciousness not through that means, not by simply quoting Shastra, but by taking us through a few meditations. He says, first of all, think of yourself as the seer. You look at the distance, you see objects. Those objects are not you, but I am observing them, right? So you're the observer, the objects are distant. Now look at your body. I can see my hand, my arm, my leg. I am still the observer of that. And now you can do that with your mind. You can close your eyes, you can let thoughts pass in front of you, and you can see, I thought that, then I thought this, then that this new thought came. You're the observer even of your mind and its thoughts. So who is this observer? That's the Atma. That is consciousness. So consciousness is real. And that is our position in the Bhaktivedanta Institute. To go out and discuss with people, you accept the reality of consciousness, yes? So where does it come from? Can it be produced from the brain? No. I'm not going to get into all the details on that, but that is a very big thesis within the Bhaktivedanta Institute. The proof that consciousness cannot be produced by the brain. And we'll give you the references that Brahma Tirtha mentioned. One of them is the work I've been involved with in the Atma paradigm. There's materials on that available on the bihstudies.org site. But also if you just go to YouTube and you tap in Atma paradigm, up comes the full course, 35 lectures. And that forms the basis of our understanding that consciousness exists, that it is irreducible to physics. There is no way that anything in modern science can explain the nature of consciousness. In June, I spent 5 days in New York at the university, where there was a major conference called organized by the Association for the Scientific Study of Consciousness. 700 of the top neuroscientists and philosophers gathered in order to discuss the aspects of what is consciousness. And the conclusion is that there is nothing in neuroscience that in any way explains how consciousness exists, the way it does. We cannot explain the fact that you perceive the world as color, as pictures, right? When you're looking out now, this is very picturesque, the scene that you're seeing around you. It's a picture that you are seeing. Where does that picture exist? Where it exists in consciousness. Because when you think about it, all that's out there are objects, and light is bouncing off that. We have no contact with those objects. Just light is coming into our eyes. And what happens to light when it goes into the eyes? It turns into electricity. So now all the brain has got is a bunch of electricity. Where's the picture? What happens is that mana, the mind, is able to take some of that data and develop a very beautiful picture of the world, which it presents on the screen of consciousness to the Atma. But the brain has no qualities of color. It has no qualities of forms. And that's the same for all the senses. When something goes in your ear, sound, we say it's a sound, it's a vibration. It vibrates the eardrum, vibrates the little bones, vibrates the pressure on the cochlea. Then that just sends another electrical signal to the brain, more electricity. Why is that a sound? Why does that hear as something? When your tongue tastes some nice samosa, more electricity goes to the brain. But why does that electricity taste of something? Completely inexplicable. You should know, and be really convinced of this, that there not only is no evidence whatsoever that the brain can produce consciousness, there isn't even a theory of how it might be possible. No evidence, and not even a theory. Isn't that amazing? And yet, in the universities and in the schools, they'll happily announce in the publications, you are your brain. You're just a brain. And when the brain stops, you stop. This is insanity. It is not science. It is not philosophy. It's hard to know what you could call it in nice terms, in words that can be used in the temple. It's really cheating. I spoke to one of the most famous philosophers on consciousness at that conference. It was the second last day. We'd just been listening to a terrible debate about how come the experience that we have is so rich, you know? And people were trying to deny it's not rich. It's not really that great, the experience. No, of course it is. I know it's great. Look at the beauty. Look at the detail that we're all experiencing. So I spoke to this philosopher called David Chalmers. And he is the person who 30 years ago coined the hard problem of consciousness. That it is impossible to explain in terms of physics, biology, and neuroscience. It is impossible to explain the actual quality of our conscious experience. So I was saying to him afterwards, I don't think that discussion really helped the matter. In fact, it seemed to make the question of explaining consciousness even more difficult. And he said, yep. The problem is, none of them have got a theory of consciousness. And they're not willing to accept the simplest theory, that consciousness is not a product of the brain. Consciousness is the function of the Atma. It's clear that consciousness exists. And if it cannot be explained by the brain, you have to say there must be something else producing it. Therefore, there has to be something like the Atma. You can call it something else if you want, but there has to be something that we call the Atma, which is the source of consciousness. So we're not making anything up. We're just acknowledging that consciousness cannot be reduced to something that the brain can do or the body can do. Therefore, it must be the function of something else. And that has been identified as the Atma. And the great thing about the Atma is that it watches the passing of time. Time is organized in kshanas, moments. And each moment walks past. This moment, you're all like this. Now, the next moment, you're all... Oh, okay. The next moment, you're all hands in the air. Okay, come on. This moment, everyone's sitting quietly. And in the next moment, you're all... Yay! And next moment, all down again. So, 3 moments have passed. Okay? And I watched all of them. I watched this one. I watched that one. And we watched the passing of time. Do you know what that means? This is a very big issue that Jiva Goswami points out, and it's included when it's first day in Osmin. You are watching the passing of time. That means that you, as consciousness, are not affected by time. Time produces change in matter. It makes things able to move from here to there, to do this, to do that. It makes things able to grow. It makes things able to shrink and decay. That's what time does to matter. It even does that to the qualities of our mind. Even the thoughts and emotions, everything in our mind gets to change from moment to moment. But the observer watches each change from moment to moment to moment. The observer is not changing. You are the same observer you have always been throughout your life. And that is Jiva Goswami's next point. You are not only the observer, you are an observer. You can cast your mind to your Kumara period. First day at school. Can you all remember your first day at school? Was it someone else's first day at school, or was it your first day at school? You were there. Yeah? And you're here now. Where's the body of that 5-year-old, 4-year-old kid? That's gone. You know, we know it all keeps changing. Biologically, it's changing all the time. Pretty well you can say not one atom of that body is present in the room today. Not an atom of it. But you're here. You were there then. You're here now. The body you had then isn't here now. That means you are something different to your body. You, the Atma, remain constant throughout the changing body, throughout all changing time. So why should you ever fear the most decisive change that time can apply on you? That point we call death. Why do you think that's going to change consciousness? Consciousness hasn't changed with any change in the body. It's not going to start doing it at death. Consciousness continues. Consciousness is not part of matter. It is not something that is manipulated by time. Time has no effect on it. Consciousness is non-temporal. Therefore, we say we the eternal. But eternal doesn't mean for a long time. It means outside of time. Unaffected by it. Therefore, we do exist. Komaram, Yovanam, Jara. And then, Tirtha, Dehantara Praptiya, we achieve another body. And another. If that's what we want to do. Or we can decide to invest ourselves in the real state of consciousness. Is the embodied state the best thing that consciousness can have? We came here because of our desires and our attention. We wanted to try this. It has its little pleasures, but it's got its real problems. It's got its real sufferings. Is it what we really want? Is there the true place of happiness for consciousness? And that is why Prabhupada coined our movement, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. That instead of shining our consciousness on Maya and just accepting all the confusion that comes with that, we shine our consciousness on Krishna and accept the enlightenment and the happiness, the joy, and the feelings of love and devotion that come from that relationship. So we'll stop at questions.
Yeah, I'll ask the first question. Now, I noticed looking at the audience, you can tell about people looking at them that I see many Punjabis. How many of you are Punjabi? I caught you. I caught you. Okay, because none of you are Punjabis or Rastas or anything else. Sorry about that if I embarrassed you. I was just having a little fun. Okay, so at this point, we thought we'd give you time to ask any questions about these topics, especially related to the BI, but anything else you have in mind.
No, that was it.
That was it. That was my quiz. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm American when I look in the mirror, but I'm not. Thank goodness, especially nowadays. Yeah, of course.
There's a gentleman.
So who carries it? Okay. So who has a question? Yes, Prabhu in the front.
No, this guy.
Oh, here. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to have your darshan. I read first book, Perfect Question, Perfect Answers.
That was my first book too. We have something in common. Thank you.
That changed me. All the questions are answered. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, question to you. You talked about this consciousness. Akhandadhi, Prabhuji? Yeah. You talked about the consciousness. So, it means what we are experiencing. So, this is matter experiencing matter. What our generally experience are, this is consciousness experiencing or matter is experiencing matter. If with mind we are enjoying. So, matter is experiencing the matter. Is it true?
Only consciousness experiences. Matter is inert, but there is subtle matter, there's subtle prakriti. That are the cognitive elements. Mana, buddhi, ahankar. These are prakriti. But their effect is to create content for consciousness to enjoy. So it is the Atma that is conscious and is experiencing what is in the mind. The mind goes out, gathers all the sensory information. And it is described like the air passing over roses. It pulls the aroma back to the mind. And the aroma is now in the mind. And consciousness, in material life, consciousness simply is interested what's on the screen of the mind. Imagine if you're so glued to your television or your computer screen that you didn't believe there was anything else to experience. I bet you there's plenty of people like that who think there's nothing else to experience than what's on your mobile phone at this moment. You know? You see them walking around all the time, and being mowed down by cars. It's crazy. It's a form of just insanity. But that's our current situation. Consciousness is so insane that it only accepts what is real, what I can experience, as what is in the mind. The mind is not conscious, but it is such a facsimile of spiritual reality. It's a perverted reflection of spiritual reality. It is material, and it's such a good reflection by Krishna's arrangement that consciousness becomes interested in it and accepts that whatever is in the mind is real, is the only reality. And we forget the whole internal potency of Krishna. We forget Goloka, Vaikuntha, we forget everything about Krishna. And we just become absorbed at what's in the mind. That's our sad state at the moment. So Krishna is very kind and allows us to engage in activities where the mind is now becoming full of spiritualized objects and figures, and we can see the spiritual form of the Lord. We can hear the spiritual vibration of Krishna's name, the Hare Krishna mantra. So now consciousness is becoming awakened to observing spirit. Does that help?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, over there. Question.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. I have just one question. Have you done any research on patients who are in a comatose state or in an altered mental state? What's the reaction and what is going through the soul when it is in a body in a patient who is in a comatose state?
Well, more studies have been done in near-death experiences, and they're well documented. Bruce Grace in the University of Virginia we're working with who has hundreds or thousands of cases. A near-death experience might look like this. I'm on the operating table. My heart flatlines, my brain waves flatline. I'm clinically dead. Meanwhile, it's a team of surgeons working on me. And one of the doctors stepped out to make a phone call to his stockbroker about something. Sadly, that happens a lot. And I've seen it. And he's 2 rooms away, and nobody could hear it into the operating room. And then when I wake up from my surgery, I say to the doctor, did your stock go up or down? Impossible. Thousands of cases documented like this. Now, in a comatose state, is there anything you want to add on that?
Well, I think that's different things are happening for different persons, it seems. Sometimes those in a comatose state are actually in very deep sleep. In deep sleep, we're not aware of anything. It doesn't mean that we're not aware, it's just that there is nothing for us to be aware of, because the mind is blanked off from us. Can you imagine you're looking at that screen, it's gone blank, and you're still not looking anywhere else. You're just looking at a blank screen, and you know, there's nothing. And then you will have no memory of that period. So many people come out of comas not remembering. It doesn't mean that consciousness has stopped. Consciousness has been active the whole time, but there is nothing for them to bring back into awakened consciousness.
So is the relation between the mind and the soul is hampered in a comatose state, or what happens? Just like you explained very well, the facsimile thing. Can it be explained in that term?
It's the same as happens to you every night when you sleep. You go through a period of deep sleep, nidra, and svapna, dreaming. And during dreaming, the mind is active. Intelligence isn't, and therefore mind is pulling together many different things which then appear to be very crazy. You know? And so we go through those different types of awareness, you know, ourselves every night. So these are 3 different states. And then there's the 4th state, Turiya, Prabhupada explains, that's when our consciousness is dedicated to Krishna and enlightened by Krishna.
Thank you.
And I might add, in the last sense to go when we're dying is hearing. And it's the last sense, and some comatose people report still hearing things. We're having a conference, as I mentioned, at IIT Monday with Leela Purushottam beginning Tuesday. And one of the papers, I believe, presenting is discussing that topic. So if your patients can be patient and you can get away, I invite you up to IIT to join us. You're welcome to. And we're active. The question you asked, though, is a very important question. And it's something, you know, we need to answer in not only theory, but in experimental. The number 1 person who studies this is a fellow named Stuart Hameroff. He runs the largest conference in the world on consciousness and science. He was a keynote speaker at our conference in 2019. He's going to be coming to IIT to speak. And he's an anesthesiologist, so this is his area. He's come up with a theory of consciousness. It doesn't make any sense. But besides that, but he's very prestigious, and he really loves devotees somehow. There's some history there. And so, and this is what Prabhupada asked us to do, to have discussion on people that don't agree with us. 1977, I was at the Life Come From Life conference, and that's what Prabhupada wanted, us to have discussions. I'll tell you one funny story, because everybody's entitled to a funny story. Prabhupada found this story funny. So listen carefully. 1977, we're having the Life Come From Life conference. What happened now can only happen in India. No other country in the world. We're having the conference. One somewhat famous scientist from Delhi, Srup Damodar, came, and he had this theory that how you could have a little, Sariputta was presenting information theory, how evolution doesn't quite work, because where does the information come from? Mathematical equations. So he came up with a solution that didn't work. but he thought he would get a Nobel Prize or whatever. So he presented his paper, and then we had responses. And then in the audience, there was one lady raising her hand, and he wouldn't call on her. Finally, she's the only one raising her hand. So he says, okay, he has to call on her. She stands up and doesn't address him, but addresses the audience and says, and my husband is saying all this atheist nonsense, but I want you to know every night he offers aarti. So this is the dichotomy we have. And it's especially prevalent in India, because in India, people kind of know you're not this body. And they, even if they're the most atheist scientists at night, they still know to offer aarti. So at the Bhaktivedanta Institute, one of the reasons Prabhupada established is to break down this wall. And your question is one of those questions that helps break down that wall. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
First of all, please accept my humble obeisances,
Yeah,
and thank
yeah.
you so much for stopping here and giving us your association. As Rishi Kumar Prabhu always says, Sunday is a sung day, so we are really blessed. And I would like to offer my sincere gratitude for asking those perfect questions, which we got the answer from none other than His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. So, as Prabhuji mentioned, that was also my first book to read. I just wanted to see who is this Mr. Bob Cohen who is asking these questions.
I look in the mirror every day and ask that question. Just very briefly, because I know time is up now. Okay, the backstory was I was, a high school teacher in the very advanced, progressive, well-run state of Bihar. Okay. To all you Biharis, my apologies. And I was stationed in the very south, which is now a different state, and I would visit Calcutta. And I came to India to understand the Gita, and I didn't want to go as an outsider. I came as an insider. So I got kuch Hindi janta hai, those kind of things. So but I was very, very frustrated. Because everyone I asked, I was even a Kurukshetra, I asked about the Gita, I couldn't, no insight whatsoever. Finally, I was in Calcutta, and the wonderful Giriraj Brahmachari that was giving a talk that just, wow. I still remember it. So I was visiting the Calcutta temple, and they said, why don't you come up to Mayapur? We're feeding the Bangladesh refugees after the 71 war. So I went there, and I was the only guest at the first Mayapur festival. There were no buildings. There was a bhajan kutir, a men's tent, a women's tent, a pandal tent. There were no, and the only guests were basically Muslim villagers who want to see, the dancing white elephants, as Prabhupada called us. And so I was the only guest by some quirk of fate. So I think Prabhupada kept me in his hut with him all day to protect me, because all the devotees were under 25 years old and quite zealous. And so, but there's more of the backstory that is for another time and place, not here. But I was very fortunate just, to be the only guest there. So I got to Prabhupada gave me a lot of mercy. One thing people don't know about Prabhupada as well as they should. Prabhupada was extremely kind. I witnessed that many times personally with others. And Prabhupada was something else that we mostly missed. He was very funny. But because of the 50-year gap in age and the cultural changes, most of it went over our head. But as I look back, I can see that. And it says in the Gita, that devotional service is executed joyfully. Thank you. Okay.
So, thank you for the backstory. My question is, Prabhuji, to you. You mentioned that there is an observer watching all time, like Kaumaram, Yavanam, Jara, from Kaumaram to Yavanam and Jara. And the consciousness is also there that is watching, like with the due course of time. The question here is that whatever we were feeling, because consciousness is the one that is feeling the things, like picture or the sound vibration or everything. So why does it feel like whatever we were feeling in the childhood or in Komaram age, we feel different? The same thing we feel different in our young age, and after due course of time in our old age, the feelings changed. Why? Because the consciousness is not getting changed, but the feelings get changed. It is with our mind, or is the consciousness that is? Because you mentioned that consciousness is not getting changed the same. Thank you.
Yes, this is a very useful kind of way of thinking. Thank you. We are the observer. The consciousness is the observer. That was Jiva Goswami's point. The Atma is the observer. The mind is the observed. Now, because of identification with the mind, we go with however it develops during this life. When your mind is when you're a child, the mind is generating ideas suitable for that age. It is not just a question of what it is learning in life. There's also another transcendental process, or at least a metaphysical process by which Krishna, as Buddhi, is directing the sanskars that are hidden in our mind, that are travel with us from lifetime to lifetime, and activating certain sanskars and memories in order to help us be able to act in a human body in this lifetime. If we get another type of body, an insect body, then Krishna, as Buddhi, activates the sanskars that remind us, here's how you flap your wings, here's how you move around, here's what you're interested in. So the mind is being conditioned in this way through all our past desires, our past karma, our past destiny. Everything is being churned around, and the mind is going through its own evolution. And because we simply are the observers, we're just accepting whatever the mind is going. And we're accepting the identity that the mind is generating, our ego kind of persona. And we think we are changing in our attitudes, and we're becoming more sophisticated and more mature, right? And it's all within the mind. And it's all relative to this one little lifetime. And we're probably just as silly and foolish and prone to mistakes as we were as a kid. But our mind is just acting differently for us. So the whole thing is stop identifying with what the mind has got. And the way to do that is not to stop the mind, but to direct the mind towards Krishna. Make it our friend. Make it full of the things that uplift us, not confuse us.
Pranam Guruji.
Right, we have a question coming from a lady.
Pranam Guruji, I'm actually, by profession, I'm a neurologist in AIMS. So my question was, is there something that we all experience, sometimes beyond all evidences and all the facts, sometimes we experience some instincts, like which tells us to do something which is not usually being done by people, like against the societal norms, or sometimes against the what will be favorable in our journey in life. Sometimes we keep on holding, sometimes there's this instinct to make some decisions. So is that being explained by consciousness? I'm curious about this consciousness thing. Is it true that the consciousness gives us these gut feelings or instincts?
That's a really good question. I'm going to turn over to Akhandadhi. But you're a neurologist?
Yeah, I'm not doing my DM neurology names.
So you asked such an appropriate question. You're a neurologist, so you have to think about working with the Bhaktivedanta Institute or Prem Kishore. Yeah, oh, very good. Okay.
Thank you very much. Actually, this aspect of kind of intuition, feeling, or inspiration is an important factor. We've got to be careful. Consciousness has handed itself over to the mind. We, as a conscious entity, are not allowing ourselves the freedom to be properly conscious. We have decided, no, I'm just going to watch the screen of my mind. Whatever comes on that television screen, I believe. Whatever comes into the mind, I believe. However, the mind is also controlled by buddhi. Buddhi is actually under the care of Paramatma. And Paramatma is watching your intention. What are you actually deeply feeling? The mind will give you what you externally want. Buddhi is watching what you are deeply feeling and thinking, do you need something more? Are you actually looking for some spiritual life? And it will kind of give you insights that you will go, oh, that's interesting. You know, maybe I could be inspired in spiritual life. I don't know if that's the sort of point you made when it's against cultural or situations.
In general, when we make some decisions or we in life, sometimes we get these gut feelings. So I just wanted to know, is that what you think is it's being explained by consciousness? When our mind says something else, that no, this is not the correct path to follow, but still there is some feeling, some instinct inside us which tells us to do this thing, which is not usually being verified by the mind, by our own mind.
It's actually all happening within the mind, but you may be thinking that it is not the rational part of your mind. You're the consciousness, you're experiencing what's in the mind. The mind comes up with rational ideas, and we tend to think, oh, that's me thinking. No, that's the mind coming up with rational ideas. But then at times, these non-rational ideas of gut feeling come into the mind. And we are actually thinking, I don't know where that one came from. Now, sometimes they could be very important insights. And sometimes they could be very foolish. So you have to watch them very carefully. And occasionally, they are direct inspiration from Krishna. But learning which is a little bit of an art. So the first thing to understand is that you, as the conscious being, are not your mind. And the thinking that you believe you are doing, actually the thoughts in your mind. And therefore they have to be looked at, every one of them. Every thought that you ever have, you have to look at and say, does this make sense? Is this the best thing for me? Is this going to make me happy? Is this going to be good for others? We have to analyze constantly. That is how to turn the mind from being the enemy to being the friend. And when you see special thoughts coming up, I'm not sure where they come, but they feel right, worth looking at them, because often those gut things are very important messages that have been collected and is allowed to come into your mind by intelligence. And often that's because Krishna is trying to help you on your path in Krishna consciousness. But step carefully, and before you make any decision or any major action, check with those devotees you trust. Am I doing the right thing? Okay?
And from a professional point of view, you may have, the medical book says one thing, and your, as we say, gut feel says something else. Sometimes that can mean a lot. There was a very famous case written up by Malcolm Gladwell in his Blink book. A very famous case. It was a museum, and they bought a ancient Greek sculpture, and they wanted to make sure it was real. So they brought in geologists to look at the age of the rock and all kinds of experts to look at the different pieces, and they concluded, there's a famous Getty Museum, yes, this is worth many millions of dollars, we're buying it. And then an art expert walked in and in 1 second said, oh, that's a phony. Now, how did he know? And this is a deep study was done to see How is it they know? So our mind has different levels of conscious, subconscious. It's still the mind. There are levels. And as we practice our devotional service, we will find that we were able to tap deeper levels and get greater and greater insights, because we're going under the assumption that we're not this mind, and just our intellectual thoughts are not everything. Logic is there. Jiva Goswami will certainly talk about it. One talk we just had at our BI conference was very interesting. I'm not going to go into detail, but it's on our website. That is, what do you do when Scripture says one thing, your observations say something else, and your inference says something else after that? How do you resolve that? And this is Jiva Goswami speaking. It's very, very important, the work of the BI, and it's even important in our daily lives. So thank you for that question. Hare Krishna. I think time is up.
Hare Krishna. It's a great privilege for us. Let's please thank from our heart His Grace Brahma Tirtha Prabhu, who has given us beyond some perfect answers also on behalf of Prabhupada, and His Grace Akhandadhi Prabhu, who has given us completely undivided intelligence on this topic. We are very, very grateful to you. And it's also important to note that both of them are beyond Bhaktivedanta Institute. There's so many other things they're doing and have done. His Grace Brahma Tirtha Prabhu is one of the moving forces of the ISKCON Resolve department, of which I also happen to be a part. And His Grace Akhandadhi Prabhu, as he himself revealed, has been involved in the Bhaktivedanta manner for a very long time, and is a great source of inspiration, both of them, for the entire Bhaktivedanta Institute of Higher Studies and Bhaktivedanta Institute per se. And in ISKCON Delhi, those of you are interested, you could just get in touch with me. We have the Institute for Science and Spirituality. We also have every Sunday a program at AIMS. Already some doctors are connected with it, so you can get in touch with me after this program. We have an Institute for Science and Spirituality, which Brahma Tirtha Prabhu was talking about, which is like working with Bhaktivedanta Institute. You could take this forward from there.
Let me just say, when I'm inviting to work with the Bhaktivedanta Institute, I'm specifically meaning, some of you may want to come to Monday for the conference, which Prem Kishore is there, but Prem Kishore is doing, we coordinate together very well, all the same things. So you have here a great opportunity with Prem Kishore, and he just got an amazing grant from the government. He's doing research that we don't have any facility to do. So what he's doing is nothing short, I would say, of extraordinary. So those of you who have some science and philosophy brains somehow, you definitely get involved and support him. His work is special. The idea for the ISS, Prem Kishore was doing congregational preaching very successfully, and Gopal Krishna Maharaj said, there's something better you can do, and took him off the service and basically understood the importance of the BI. I was just reading, I had it on my cell phone, but I'm not going to pull it up again. Prabhupada's maybe the last conversation he had on the planet was put out in the Prabhupada Today. It's less than 24 hours before he left us. And he was talking to Sri Damodar about the necessity of life comes from life. So any of you who have that, we all like to put in advertisements for our programs. The Pujari wants you on the altar, the book distributor wants you on the street. And this is natural. That's how it's supposed to be. And because I do this, somehow I'm saying, if you do see Prem Kishore, his work he's done, I cannot thank Gopal Krishna Maharaj enough for the wisdom to pull him off his congregation and put him there. And the work he does, I mean, it's just simply wonderful.